Hello guys, on today's tutorial we will learn how to use Stripe elements with Webflow, Wized, and Xano, but this is not only useful for Webflow, Wized, and Xano, this same approach can be done in any other local tool like Bubble or WeWeb. So I hope you guys like this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching.
Hello everyone. So I want to do a step-by-step tutorial, but I realized that this was going to take too long. So we will be mainly going to focus on a good structure on how to set up Stripe elements. So we will go, step by step of what we have done on Webflow, Wiz, and Sano. And I hope that this is more than enough for you to learn, a proper structure for Stripe elements. Let's get started with Webflow. So first of all, we have two pages here, home page and a thank you page. In the general settings of our project, obviously, as we're using Wiz, we have the Wiz library right here, the two embeds. What else? We also, inside the home page, we have the Stripe elements only in the home page, because here is where we will be generating the Stripe elements. Now we will be populating this div block right here, this empty div block with the Stripe elements. It has an attribute of Wiz. This can have an ID. We just need an identifier. And finally, we have a thank you page where we'll be redirecting the users. Now, keep in mind that inside the homepage here, this is a form right here. It has a type of a form, and it also has a with form element attribute, because we will be listening to the submit of this element. And finally, we have a pay now button. This doesn't need to have, an attribute. We could have an attribute, so we can create as well a loading state here, a loader, but we can also reference it from the parent, the form parent. But let's begin let's continue, with Wiz and Sana. So in Wiz, let me just show you, before I show you the only function that we have for this, I will show you the variables that we have set up in order to achieve the Stripe elements structure. So we have, as always, our API branch. I have done a tutorial about, these two variables, data source and API branch. Um, this is dynamic based on the domain where we are at. If it includes the webflow.io, we will be sending the headers. This is for Xano. We will be sending the API request to the staging environment, and if it's not the webflow.io, we'll be sending everything to production. Now, we also have the Stripe elements folder base URL. This is from Xano. I'll just have it here, so it can be used here as an app. We are not using any apps here, as this will be pure JavaScript, but this is super cool because in case we change the base URL of our folder, we don't need to go into the app and also into the function where we have it, like for example here, request URL. So instead of changing everything manually, we can just change one thing right here in the variable, and that's it. So that's pretty cool. What else? We have the Stripe public key. This is also dynamic based on the domain. If we're under the webflow.io, we'll be setting the public key forum staging. Otherwise, we'll be setting the one from production. Now, how do we get those? If you go to Stripe and you type here developers, you will go to this tab right here where you can find the public key in test, and also if you enable this to be true, to be false, this will show you, the production environment keys. Now, always the public keys are for the front end, and the secret keys are for the backend. Keep that in mind. We will be using these to generate the payment intent from Xano. And finally, we have webhooks, but I will show you that in the Xano setup. Now, in Wiz, we will go through this function right here. Now, as I said, this is not a real scenario. This won't be probably be how you will set it up, but it will be similar. So keep in mind that this is not mainly for showing you how to do it, because this can be used in different ways based on your needs. So this function has 93 lines. It's pretty short, you can say. So I will go step by step. So first of all, we got here the form element. We're getting the form element from Webflow. We have also the Stripe element wrapper. We will be pushing the Stripe elements. We also have the request URL. This is the request URL. They will be making a API request from. As you can see right here, we have right here. If I copy the base URL, it's pretty much this. Um, what else? We have a return URL. This is our thank you page. Now this will be slightly different. As you guys know, this is working on our home page. So it's this part right here. But this can be different. You probably want to get your base URL and then add the plus thank you. This needs to be dynamic in case you know the users are from production or staging. Now that we have the Stripe library, we are then calling the Stripe library with our public key, pretty much to create an instance of the Stripe. Now we are also setting up the appearance. Now you can obviously ask for help this to ChatGPT, so they can help you, with everything that is related with the Stripe code here. Where I will leave this with project as a clonable, so you will be able to have access to all of this JavaScript, and then you can adapt it to your needs. Then we are creating a couple of variables, client secret and elements that we'll be using or we'll be setting down here. So we have a function here, create payment intent, where we are passing a variable called price ID. And from here, we are making first an API request. Then obviously we're setting this as a variable called response. The method is post. The content type is application JSON. This is always for Xano. Now, apart from that, obviously there can be other content types that you can make to Xano, but for this scenario, it's a JSON. Pretty much is the most common case. Now we're passing the two important variables are called the two important headers, x data source and x branch, the variables that we already had set up in here in Wized. We're also passing the body a price ID. Now this is, I will show you our setup in Xano so you have an idea what this price ID is. But this is something really basic that we have just created for this example. But I want to share a thought here that it's important you guys know. Do not ever pass prices from the front end to the back end. If you have a cart here, let's say you have an e-commerce and you're passing the prices of each product, and then from there you are using those prices that you're sending from the front end to Stripe, that's a terrible issue because people it's able to handle those prices manually here and make any API requests to the backend with any price that they want. What you always need to do is send quantities, how many they have selected, and send a price, a product ID or something from where you can then calculate that pricing on the backend and then send that to Stripe. You need to calculate the prices in two different ways. One of them, it will be, on the front end for the users to see, but you won't be using that information. Well, you will be sending to the backend, because this is the most common case. If you have an e-commerce, you will be sending a list of product IDs and the quantity of each, but do not ever use prices from the front end and sending those to the backend, because that will give the option to users to set any pricing that they want, make the API request, and if you don't have the right preconditions, it will be not the ideal scenario. So make sure that you have that in mind. Now let's continue. As you can see, we're just sending a pricing ID because it's just a basic example. What you will normally be doing is probably sending, an object here with price ID and also a quantity, right? Oh, I'm not able to type anything, but this is not the case. Now, we have also, if the response is not okay, so it's empty completely, we will show the error. Here, we will show the status and the status text from the response. What else? We also are setting up the data that we're getting from this response as a variable called, data, await response.json, and we're seeing that as I said, as a variable called data. Then what we're sending from Xano is the client secret. I will show the Xano setup in a bit. We are giving that client secret value right here. The client secret was set up before, so we can automatically just set the value of the variable. And finally, we're passing that to the Stripe elements. This is the step where we're generating the Stripe elements. We're generating the Stripe elements where we're passing two variables, the appearance that is right here. This can be edit, and the client secret. This client secret is being created by the payment intent that we are generating right here from Xano. I will show, as I said, all the setup in a bit. Finally, we're mounting this Stripe element, we're creating it, and then we're mounting it into the Stripe elements wrapper, the element with the Wized attribute that we have right here. And we are then creating this payment intent. We are finally calling this whole function, we're calling this whole function passing the Stripe, the price ID. This is being set manually. This is total manual, this won't be a real scenario as I said. So we're just passing a number one. And finally, we have the fourth element, the event listener for the submit. So this will be pretty much confirming the payment to Stripe. We are preventing the default from Webflow. We're checking if the client secret is not empty. And finally, we are confirming the payment element. This is all from the Stripe documentation. As I said, you can use ChatGPT to do any changes. And the only two things that we're passing here is the elements. This is the elements that are containing pretty much all the card details information from the user or bank account details or whatever. You do not ever want to handle any payment details. You want everything to be done by Stripe. They have such a great tool. You don't ever want to be touching, any important details from your clients. So we are letting Stripe do everything pretty much. They are passing the elements, and the only thing what we're really passing is the return URL that I have created right here as well. And then we have some conditionals if we get an error, if the payment fails, if the payment is successful. And finally, we are redirecting the user. Well, this is all being done handled, by Stripe directly. So pretty much we are not seeing this type of alerts here. As once the payment is successful, you're automatically redirected by the Stripe library. So that's pretty much for Stripe. As I said, I will be sharing this as a clonable, so you guys will be able to use any of these or edit any of these JavaScript. Okay, so let's continue with the last part, Xano. So we are missing two parts. We are missing our first API request here where we are generating the Stripe payment intent, and from there we're getting the client secret, and that's where we are passing to the front end. And also what we are missing is the webhooks and how we are handling that dynamically. So let me just show you. First, the order API request, the one that we are treating right here. Right here, this whole URL that is being fetched right here. This is what we're doing. So we're passing the price ID, as you can see right here. This is being set manually to be one here from the front end. So let me just show you. This is a basic example. We have just a couple of tables here in Xano. Let me just show you. One of them is called prices, where we have, a list of prices. We're using the price number one, the ID number one, but this can be a table called products, right? Where you have the product ID here. What else? Now you don't need to have the prices here. You can also store this in a Stripe, where you can just populate the Stripe product ID here in Xano. But as I said, this will be different in different scenarios. And we also have a table called orders, where we are adding the orders here. Everything is being set in test, nothing in production, as we haven't tested anything on production. Everything will be dynamic, but everything has been done under the webflow.io because we don't have a production URL here or a production domain. So let me just show you this API request. So we're passing the price ID. First of all, we're listening to the headers of this request from Xano here to check if the X data source is test. It means if we're in the test environment, then we want the secret Stripe API key to be set. Let me just show you the environment variables that we have here in Xano. That's important. So we have two environment variables here: production API key from Stripe and the staging API key from Stripe. These are the secret ones from staging and from production. So you need to have both. It's important. You will see this in not this specifically, but also you will probably want to also have your production domain and your staging domain here, so then you can use it manually. You can also create a table for that. As you can see here, I have an example of base URLs. We are not using this right here, but this is something that you can use also, to have the name of your database here, test and live. And if it's test, you have a base URL. If it's live, you have another production URL. We don't have one. It's just static text. But this can be cool because you can have more than even 3 database sources, right? Where you can even have different databases, because Xano allows you to create multiple databases. Right now, my plan only allows me to have 2, but you can create more than 2. So now APIs here. Let's go back to Stripe elements. So let's continue here with the API request order. So after we check, the environment, we set the Stripe API key. We get the record from prices from the ID that we sent from the front end, and then we calculate the price. We set the price. Now keep in mind that Stripe allows you need to have you can't have decimals, so you always need to add two zeros at the end, so multiply everything by 100. So what I'm doing is getting the price from the price table. Let me just go to the price table here. As you can see from this, we're getting the price. We're making sure, this is all just for the example, but either way, we're making sure that it only has 2 decimals. We're rounding the number to 2 decimals. And then finally, we're multiplying that by 100, because as I said, the Stripe doesn't allow decimals. So that's for the Stripe price. And then we are getting the base URL here. So from our HTTP header that we're sending from the front end, we know from which database we're calling, just like we were doing right here, right? The header's getting the X data source. If it's test, then it will get the base URL from here. If it's live, if it's not test, then we will automatically get the live base URL. Finally, then we're adding a record here in our order where we are setting the status of being pending, because it hasn't been paid yet. This is just the generation of the payment element. We are also passing the price. And finally, in this API request, we are creating a payment intent to Stripe. You can look into the Stripe API documentation here. I have just set a few fields here, but Stripe API reference, and you can type here payment intents. Payment intents right here, where then you can go here to create payment intent, and you will see all of the parameters that you can use to generate a payment intent. This is super important that you look up to every single field that you can add here. There are some that are necessary for certain, Stripe flows like connect. This is for marketplaces, but not in, for simple flows like this one. So let's continue here. So we are passing the amount, the currency, the payments that we will be enabling for the users, and metadata here. The only metadata we're passing is the order ID that we have just created. This is as well important. In the metadata, you don't need to pass a lot of things. You need to make sure that you are creating something, like an intent of an order, like in your database. So then where you can just pass an ID, and this order will be holding, all the information about the request of the user. Because, Stripe gives you a really low amount of characters that you can use in the metadata. So keep that in mind. We are then passing the headers, like the authorization, with our Stripe secret key. And this is encoded in a base 64 for algorithm. So that's pretty much it. Something really simple, a really simple way to set up this API request is to always just copy the code and paste this in, whenever you are, you can import the code right here and paste it, and this will be automatically populated, and then you can change the values dynamically. Now let's continue. After that, we get, the response from Stripe, and then we are populating, we're sending to the front end from the Stripe API intent, the response, the result client, the result, and then the client secret. Now, I guess it will make sense, not I guess, we should have some precondition here, where, let me just stop and debug. This is Stripe payment intent API, so we can know what we're getting. Here, let's just run this. Awesome. we run it from production and we don't have any production key here. So it worked now, so I can copy this and then we can disable that, but now we can create a subpath, define, and then we need to make sure that the status equals 200 or is less than 300. That will also make sense. Okay, let's add a condition. This has just changed. Because everything inside 200 is successful, but you will always, pretty much all the time, you will see 200, 202. Those are the most common scenarios. So let's just remove this. Otherwise, you will want to get an error here. I guess we can also, ideally, you can populate the error from a Stripe, but in this, as we are just testing this flow, I would just set up something really basic. Let's copy a Stripe failed. Okay. Okay, cool. And yep, that's pretty much it for our first request. So once we generate this payment intent, right, and it's being paid by Xano, by the clients, then we need to listen into the events from Stripe. So once a client makes the payment, how do we know that the payment has gone through? So Stripe has webhooks where you can listen to events. So here we have created a webhook inside the staging flow with the so let me just show you. So if I copy, for example, so first of all, the first thing that I did here is create the webhook, this post URL. And as you can see here, we're under the staging. If I copy this endpoint right now and I paste it, you can see that we have the 2 dots and the staging. This is because, this is another way to work with the staging environment and the production environment in Xano, where you can add the name of your staging branch inside the URL. But if I change this to be the live version, sorry, edit branch right here, and I copy the Stripe, where is the Stripe elements? I don't see, because it hasn't been created here. That's why. It's my mistake. I won't be able to find that, but I guess, if you copy a request from the production environment, you won't get those staging words. So first of all, we create in this is a test mode in Stripe. So after you create this is pretty much will be what you get asked. You will be asked to get an endpoint, and then you need to select the events that you want to listen to. We're just going to select one that is going to be payment intent succeed. So whenever it's the payment is successful, let's close this. We will get all the information from the events, as you can see right here. This is an example of the response, where we get first of all the amount that we're charging, the ID of the payment intent, the amount received. We get the client secret from the event. The most important things are the metadata, and there's one real important, that it's the environment, if it's from production or staging. So let's keep that in mind. Live mode, as you can see, is false, so we will be listening to this as well if we're in the production or staging, and I will show you how we will do that. So let's now continue with the webhook. So after we get the data here, in this first step, we're getting all the data as a webhook, get all raw inputs. We're checking if this live mode is false. If it's false, we're setting the set data source here. This is a function that you can use in Xano, where you can set the data source to be anything. So we are passing the test data source here, as our data source is called test. As I said before, you can change the label. Here I can change the name. Instead of being test, it can be called staging, so I will need to change that here to be staging, but that's not the case. And after that, we're just editing the order from here just to be paid. Obviously, in real scenarios, you will be probably handling, emails, confirmations of the payment and all of that, because also Stripe gives you like the receive URL, so you can send that to your user. Uh, but this is pretty much the whole setup. And now, how do we make this to work dynamic with Stripe? So now, in Stripe, in the production flow, you can also, if you go to here to webhooks, you can create the same event destination, but instead of using, if I copy all of this, instead of using this whole URL, just remove the two dots and the name of your branch, of your staging branch, and copy this webhook and listen for the same events here. So I will create a select event. This will be payment intent, where is it? Succeed. And I will add this event, and pretty much now we have the event for production, and we also have one. Let me just go here to webhooks, and now we have one for staging. And both will be, will be one of them will be using, the branch from staging, and the other one will be using the one from production, the one you really want to be using, for real case scenarios. So now you can work dynamically here, make updates here in your staging branch, and also once you have finished those updates, then you can merge the branches. I have a tutorial about this, so I hope you guys look into it, and I hope this tutorial was valuable, mainly on how to do this, on a web app. Is mainly to learn the basics on how to properly set this up, just so you can have a secure payment flow. Thank you so much for watching.